People of the internet, over the past 2 years, Joe Rogan has established himself as speaking for the conservative party. And in the election, we saw his endorsement for Trump. And of course, we've all heard his complaints about cancel culture, COVID, and so on. But now, since Joe Rogan has been getting backlash for being part of the alt-right or conservative side of things, he is now trying to backpedal away from it. And today we're going to learn exactly how he is doing that and how he is trying to distance himself from the alt-right.
Take it there, who gon' take it there, who gon' take it there? Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air, you know what's in the air, you know what's in the air, you know what's in the air. It's possibility, it's possibility, it's possibility, it's possibility.
All right, so I don't want to spend too much time on this because there's a lot going on right now. There's a few things that I want to update you guys on, as well as show you a couple things just to give you a general sense of the temperature of the country right now. But something interesting that I saw, sort of an update on a previous episode that I did about Jordan Jensen, where she kind of goes on this weird rant talking with Stavros about trans people. She uses the T slur. It's kind of a mess. And a lot of people ended up talking about that, mostly from the angle of like Stavros is the cool comedian who calls other comedians out on their bullshit. Most of what resonated about that clip in the sort of like comedy commentary world is that he said, you're auditioning for Rogan, you're auditioning for Kill Tony. And so that got repeated a lot. But then
the big point for the comedy commentary community was that kind of talk must come from Austin. You must be in the comedy mothership. You must be, I think he called it Austin brain or something like that. Now, the Austin comedy scene is being associated with alt-right commentary. Well, whether that's what they intended to do, that is just what is happening now. And they've gotten this image or this brand for being homophobic, racist, etc. Right? And that is kind of what Joe Rogan built, and now it's starting to backfire on him. And I always find it funny, like, I don't really care what people believe. People believe a lot of things, and it's their right to, and if I don't like it, I just don't pay attention to it. And what I don't understand is if you spent since COVID till now fighting cancel culture, the COVID, the corrupt California politics, you spent all this time fighting about it on your show, arguing with people, giving these big long lectures and rants. If that's what you believe, you said all these things, you attracted this fan base, you attracted this culture. If that's what you believe, why don't you just stand up for it? I don't understand why he just doesn't do that, but you can see that that is not the case. Because if you really did believe it, there's plenty of people that stand up there and say all these things and they stand for it. But the reason is Joe Rogan doesn't stand up for what he believes in is because maybe necessarily that wasn't what he believes in. Maybe that's what his money believes in. And he has taken the money from these guys. He's played the game, and now it's backfiring on him. And now he is associated with the alt-right. Whether he likes it or not, that's just what it is.
And also there was a lot of discourse about it on Twitter. It was a whole thing. And so I knew that probably there was going to be more on the Joe Rogan episode, but I didn't think that they were going to mention that. I figured they had maybe taped it earlier than that. So she mentions a little bit about what happened that day when she got a ton of pushback about that specific episode, kind of offers no contrition whatsoever, and basically she restates and reconfigures her point to be something a lot more reasonable than it was. And then Joe Rogan also responds to some criticism that he's been getting and the general Austin scene has been getting about them being the sort of like alt-right comedy scene. And so it's interesting to see both of them are kind of backing off that position. She might have thought Joe Rogan would be the place that he's going to fully back her up. And he did back her up on that. It's not like he left her out to dry when she was telling this story about how she got piled on over that statement. But at the same time, the comedy world seems to be kind of running away from this whole thing about being alt-right, being edgy. They're not liking it anymore. You're not hearing that much from these guys about Kimmel getting pulled off the air. And a lot of them got to be scared over that. Not just scared to come out and say something, but scared in the sense that, you know, what got a lot of these people talking about cancel culture and yapping about that is that they could see themselves a little bit in the people that it happened to, whether it's Louis C.K. or somebody else who gets pulled off the air over something. A lot of times it's less the details that matter, and it's more like, well, that could happen to me over this or that or anything. And so I think now when you see the government literally lean on a company to pull somebody off the air and it happens within a day, that's pretty scary. So you see some backpedaling from these people now, and in the case of Rogan, kind of trying to distance himself from this impression of the culture that he's created in Austin. So let's listen to this real quick.
You have to think about this, you know, they're scared, stuff like that, but these are the free speech guys. Why aren't you standing up for free speech? Like, I don't believe in the Republican or Democratic Party. I just look at it with the facts, and I look at it, and it's just like, if you look at Jimmy Kimmel, free speech. These things are happening to their fellow entertainers and people in their industry. And of course, they want to back off from this now, because when you take something from a snake, it always bites you, you know? So this could happen to them. These people in power don't care about loyalty. They care about their best interest and what serves their best interest. And so that could be you one day and not the next. And these guys know that. So they're seeing these things happen, and they're like, wait, what did we do? And it's like, when you get involved in politics, it's never what it seems. No matter what side you're on, it's never what it seems. And what they say and what actually happens are usually two completely different things. Just look at what a politician says on the campaign trail and what they do when they're in office. So this is why you've got to stay out, and you don't take that money from these people, because they will always come to collect. And usually when they collect, it's not what they said.
I just went through a horrible Twitter thing last night.
Oh, no.
Dude, I got dragged.
You can't read that stuff.
I did. Dude, it was a fan hit me up and goes, don't go on Twitter. And I went on Twitter, and it was this crazy out of context thing where I was like talking. I was on Stav's podcast, and I was talking about this guy who used the word, I'm not going to say it, T-R-A, I don't know how to spell it, N-N-Y?
Okay.
He used that word. And I was being like, that word is so fucking antiquated that at this point to me, it sounds like somebody's just calling like a drag queen that. And everybody took it as me saying that trans people are in drag.
Oh, God.
And it like, dude, it was just like went at me. And like, the crazy thing is I thought I was being woke on that podcast. I had like friends of mine being like, fuck Jordan. Like, it was crazy.
Friends of yours?
Friendly people, like people I work with.
Yeah, those people can go eat shit. Those pylon people, they can all go eat shit.
But that was my like first big one. I've had one before, but that was like...
That kind of shit pushes people away from all the things you're trying to promote. Like, it doesn't mean that people hate trans people if they say something like that. That's not what you're saying. And
I was saying the opposite. I was being like, this guy was such an asshole for using that word. Also, that word is so corny that I feel like at this point it's not even reference to transgender people, that it's like what we say for drag, basically.
Some people still use it.
Totally.
But it's that's not the point. The point is, it's like, what are you trying to do? You're not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. So shut the fuck up. Everybody's just looking for a reason to be offended. It's just trying to find anything that they can, like, green light, go. It's
and
no
just
reason,
pulling it out.
No nuance. Yeah, of course.
It's so crazy.
Of course.
It was so, and I'm just like reading all of them, and I was like, this is so many people that are just like, this dumb bitch.
We were in the green room the other day, and someone had called us like some alt-right white supremacist club. I was in the room with Brian Simpson, who's black, Derek Poston, who's black, Hassan Ahmad, who's Muslim. Yeah. It was Tony Hinchcliffe, Ron White, and me. I'm like, this is a pretty diverse lineup. Like, what are we talking? This is so silly.
You're looking at comments. See, it's hard. It's hard to not look at these fucking things.
It was a video. It wasn't a comment. It was a video of someone that one of the guys was playing. It was like, look how fucking stupid this is. The idea that this, like, that you had to be, like, I'm not even a Republican. Like, I voted for Trump because I thought we were going in a terrifying direction where there was not really a president for 4 years and the same people are now going to be running the government. Like,
Weren't you like a Bernie bro?
Yes. So I've only voted Republican once in my life. The idea that you have to be a Republican to get in at that club is so ridiculous. That club is filled with gay people, black people, straight people, white people, Asian. No one gives a fuck.
Yeah, that green room is.
You're just doing comedy. You're just doing comedy.
So here's the thing about the internet. A lot of these videos, like including mine, probably get stuff incredibly wrong. Because what we see and what actually happens, what they know in their experience, is often there's things that what we see on the internet are missing pieces. But since we just have one piece, we look at that and we go, oh, he's this, right? I know that people talk shit about you and stuff like that, and they'll say things about you on the internet, but then they're completely forgetting this one thing that shows that you had nothing to do with it, that they're wrong, that they got it completely wrong. So I totally understand that point of view from Joe Rogan. And just to be fair, right? I totally understand that because a lot of the times the internet's wrong. We just get pieces of the story and we cram them together and we make this. We could be making completely wrong assumptions. But on the other hand, the point that the internet does point out, even though we're missing some of the missing pieces or the nuance to the situation, there's just a pattern of things that just don't seem to be like coincidence or seem to be a pattern of behavior. And so when I watch Joe Rogan, I try to hear it from his point and be like, yeah, there are those people in your club and stuff. But then there's all these things where they show differently. And so I think that's where Joe Rogan's good at his job, because he has a good way. And usually con men have a good way of making you go, oh yeah, Joe makes sense. Oh, that's true. So it's like watching Joe Rogan now, once you discover this world he's in a little bit and how it's operated, you kind of got to watch him and you're like hitting the tennis ball back and forth, it's on this side and then you're like, nope, and you hit it back over to the other, because he's always trying to find some way to dismiss these things and to brush them under the rug. But then they're weaved with little grains of truth, which puts you in this position like, huh? And so I think the best way to do at it from the internet standpoint, knowing we don't get all the details, and if you really were serious about this beyond watching a fun video and making fun of some shit, and you really were serious about it, you definitely have to look at the patterns, because Joe has some patterns, especially if you go back into the older stuff like the Ice House Chronicles, the early days of Jerry. You listen to those podcasts, you see a lot of the things that have come to fruition now, or were just tiny seeds back then, blossom into these big things that he stands for, he promotes, he takes the money of certain people. So watching Joe is just like, I think you got to be careful, because if you're not, and I could be completely wrong, I don't have the nuance like I said, but if you're not, he'll lull you to sleep and make you forget all about it.
Comedy. Whoever you are, whatever you believe, we have tons of lively discussions.
I will say one time I was there and Jordan Peterson walked through and I was like, you can't be here. That's too on the nose.
He's here all the time.
That's crazy.
It is weird. Yeah.
That's crazy. With his daughter?
Oh yeah, he came with his daughter. Yeah. He's been there a few times. Yeah, he even did Kill Tony.
Oh, he was on it?
Yeah, he was on Kill Tony. Yeah.
All right, so when Jordan Jensen originally said that stuff to Stav, it's a lot worse. You can go listen to the episode that I made about it, or there's plenty of other podcast episodes, but I think I posted the longest clip of what she said. But it's also right at the top of the episode that she did recently on Stavros's podcast. Go listen to it and compare that with what she just said on Rogan and ask yourself if those are the same statements. But I do see what she's saying. I think she really cleaned it up. And if she had said what she said just then on Stavros's podcast, nobody would have given a fuck. But it was the fact that she opened up at the top of the pod with this insane shit. She's dropping this T slur like 4 times, and she's talking about how the T slur is just drag, and how if you're a feminist, you have to be upset about trans people getting fake tits, and she was going off. So it's part of her brand. She does this, she just pops off, and I think there is some value in the fact that these are like half-baked thoughts that she is working out in real time, and I think that's part of why people relate to her. And other comics as well. It's like that ability to sort of formulate something in real time and not necessarily have to get it right. I do think it's important for there to be some space for that, especially among people who are entertaining to listen to speak. But at the same time, if you're coming out and dropping slurs, words that you know are slurs, somebody's telling you that it's a slur and you keep saying it, and maybe it was just that in the moment she felt frazzled and couldn't articulate her point. But again, if she had said what she said there on Rogan on Stavros's podcast, then there would have not been, maybe a tiny bit of backlash, but it definitely wouldn't have echoed the way it did. And it seems like all she would have had to say is like, maybe I didn't do a great job of explaining it, because she didn't. She did a terrible job of explaining it. And she's obviously backpedaling here. Even in that conversation, she said, I'm not a TERF, which even though she had literally just said something that TERFs say all the time, I think she would argue she meant something slightly different. But the point being, she was kind of emanating that type of rhetoric, but then immediately backpedaling from it. And that's what you see happening here too. And I do think that this is an interesting shift in the dynamic, because it's not just, oh, I'm getting all this public backlash and now the thing I have to do is say sorry. But instead, especially with Rogan here, what you see is they're running away from being associated with the things that in the past they weren't that worried about being associated with. So it's not.
Well, I'm going to end this video here, and you can continue to watch it. But I agree. The thing is I'm not much into the politics. There's just so much stuff going on. And I think people can be who they want to be as long as, it's not harming people or damaging things. You know what I mean, right? I just don't really care. And if I don't like it, I just am not around it. And so, like, that's why I'm not a fan. It's just constantly keep going on about these things, like constantly. And like now you're fighting over people's rights and humanity. And it's just like, you're a comedian. Why are you doing this? And like, why in general, we can't change who people are. Right. And it just is what it is. And just don't be around it if you don't like it. They're going to be it whether or not you like it or not, So it's like, we're always fighting, and I think these are just things to divide us more. And I don't agree with a lot of stuff, a lot of things, but you know what? I just mind my business. But it's interesting to see that Rogan has spent so much time talking about this, so much time complaining about this. He's built this world around him, and he can say there's all these types of people in his club, but then you get people in the club that go into the green room and perform there, and they say that you're saying all this gangster shit about people being racist and slurs. And like I said, there's just things you just don't say, whether you believe it or not. There's just words, things you avoid just for the common good of the collective whole, right? Just because if you say them, they are triggering, they are like dropping bombs in the middle of the conversation. Some of these things are taboo, yet they don't seem to care about the greater good or the whole or how made people feel. And in that green room, apparently they're just saying whatever they want, regardless of how they come across in society and things. And this is the world they have built. And it's just kind of like Joe Rogan. you may have not had to realize this. You may not realize this is what you were doing, which I doubt. But this is where you brought yourself. This is the bed you made. Now lie in it, right? And he doesn't want to. And I think that's because he has a pattern of dishonesty, of selling himself out to the highest bidder. And he's shown that since the beginning of his career till now. And now he has to pay for the consequences of those podcast hours, those thousands of hours where he's ranted about these things, promoted these things, backed these things. And he doesn't like the finish line where it brought him. Well, you shouldn't have done it in the first place. You should have known. This little story of famous people putting themselves in places where they don't belong has happened over and over and over again. In fact, you've interviewed many of guests that have done this. You've talked about it on your show. And so I don't understand. But on the other side, if you truly do believe those things, why don't you stand up for them? If that's what you've been advocating for 2 years. So you see that Joe Rogan isn't the man he says he'd be, and he's just in it for the fame, the success, the money, etc. Because if you really did believe him, you'd put yourself out there like Charlie Kirk and Nick Fuentes and Rush Limbaugh and Rachel Maddow and you know, the guy from the Young Turks. Like, those guys live in their political identities, their beliefs, their parties, their candidates, and they stand up for them. Well, Joe Rogan isn't doing that. So does he really believe that? Well, if you see this pattern of Joe Rogan doing shady things, you can look at his On It company. The vitamins and all that was founded on a false study that didn't even conclude anything about the bullshit they were selling. He's constantly done this all throughout his career. So whether I don't have nuances, I can look at patterns of your behavior and I can see that you're a man that sells shit you don't believe in, or necessarily have any regards of the consequences they could bring for money. And this is the case here. And I think a lot of the stuff he truly does believe in, which brings a third option, is he's too scared to stand up. I think it's a mix of selling yourself for money, and I think it's a mix of, well, maybe he does really truly believe these things, because there are many patterns of him being racist in the past, doing these things, saying these things, talking about women in certain ways, having friends that willingly admit abuse to women on his stage, on his show. And there's a pattern of that too. So I may not know all the details, and I may not have all the nuance to make this whole, you know, and I may be completely wrong. But if I look at what Joe Rogan has said, Joe Rogan has done, then at the very least, I believe he's a liar and a dishonest man. Let me know what you think in the comments. Peace.
Know you like to bang, yo. Don't stand.